Hello everyone, and welcome to the Blue Moon Stories channel. In this video, you will hear 3 chilling stories, some created, some inspired by real events. If you like these stories and wish to support this channel, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Now, let's begin. My name is Mark. I'm 28. What you're about to hear isn't something I read, or something someone told me. This happened to me. Every detail, every moment, I wish I could forget. I took the night shift at the morgue for one simple reason. I was broke and needed a job. Any kind of job that would pay the bills and bring food to table. The job adverb said night shift with immediate start, and this is what I needed at that moment. I applied, and to my surprise, the next day I was called to start the night shift. Obviously, not such an attractive job opportunity. Probably I was even the only one who applied. I was told 2 weeks of probation, then a full-time indefinite contract. Fine with me. I needed a steady job. The first week went normal. Just me, paperwork, and the stillness of the dead. Bodies came in. I logged them, stored them, waited for the morning staff to handle the rest. Nothing dramatic, nothing disturbing. I even started liking the job. Until one night. I started my shift just as any other day. While pouring myself a cup of stale coffee, my manager walked in. That alone was unusual. He never showed up during my shift. "You're going to have to make a run," he said, not even greeting me. "A run?" I asked. He nodded. "Another town, about an hour out, small hospital. They've got a body that needs to be here by morning for autopsy." I didn't argue. That was part of the job. Rare, but it happened. "They've already sealed the body," he added. "Just pick it up and bring it back. Should be straightforward." I grabbed the keys from the transport van and drove off. If only I knew. The drive started off normal. The road stretched endlessly ahead, illuminated only by my headlights cutting through the darkness, like 2 weak beams trying to hold back something much larger. The sky was heavy, swollen with clouds. Then the rain began. At first it was soft, like fingertips tapping gently against the windshield. Lightning was flashing in the distance, announcing much worse is coming. By the time I reached the hospital, I was already tense. I hate driving at night, especially in bad weather. The building looked abandoned. Only a few dim lights flickered inside, casting weak yellow glows through the windows. The parking lot was empty. Not a single car. Inside, it was quieter than the morgue. A nurse sat behind the desk, her expression blank, almost distant. "You're here for the transfer," she said without looking up. "Yeah." She handed me paper to sign and nodded. "End of the hall." No questions, no small talk, no eye contact. I went to the end of the hall where the coffin was already waiting. On the lid, there was a filled form. I took a look. It said, "Unknown male." "Okay, Mr. No Name, let's take you home," I said, and pushed the trolley down the hall, packed the coffin in the car, and headed back. On the way back, I noticed the night got darker, air heavier, then a loud stroke, boom, thunder so close that it felt like a bomb. Next moment, rain slammed down in thick sheets, distorting everything beyond the glass. The wipers struggled, dragging back and forth with a tired, squeaking rhythm, barely keeping the view clear. It felt like driving through a waterfall. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, fingers stiff, knuckles pale. My shoulders locked up, my body leaning forward instinctively, as if getting closer to the glass would somehow help me see through the storm. I started talking to myself. I always did that on long drives. It grounded me, kept me concentrated and calm. "Just keep going," I muttered. "Almost there." "Mr. No Name, "How are you holding back there?" I said, trying to sound funny to myself, to shake off the tense of the strange night. I didn't really expect to get any answer, but almost immediately I heard something that seemed like a voice saying, "Let me out." I froze. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The coffin sat exactly where I left it. Still, silent, sealed. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel, the leather slick under my damp hands. I listened. Nothing. Just rain. "Just your imagination," I whispered. "Tired, that's all." But then it came again, clearer this time. Voice. Soft, weak, almost fragile. "Out." Panic hit me all at once. My blood ran cold, chest tightened, body stiffed. I slammed the brakes. The van lurched. The tires lost grip. And suddenly, I was off the road. I sat there for a moment, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. Then slowly, I turned around. The coffin hadn't moved. "What's wrong with you, Mark?" I told myself, "Pull yourself together," pissed off at what I've done. I stepped out into the storm, swearing at me, at the weather and damn job. The cold hit me instantly, soaking through my clothes, clinging to my skin like icy fingers. The mud sucked at my boots as I moved towards the tire. The front tire was deeply stuck in the mud. I tried everything: acceleration, pushing, adjusting. Nothing worked. I took the phone to call the manager and embarrassed myself, showing I'm not capable of handling one simple job. But the battery was on at 10%. I was to give up and just wait until rain stopped, or someone hopefully passed by and pulled over to help. Both seemed least likely to happen. Then, I heard a voice, right behind me. "Looks like you need a hand?" I spun around so fast I nearly slipped. A man was standing behind me. Tall, slim. He was wearing a long jacket and hat, but I could see he was around 50. Pale skin, deep eyes. He was smiling, kindly. Without thinking twice, I accepted the help. And while we were pushing the car, it came to my mind, and I asked him, "I didn't hear you pull up." "The rain is loud, isn't it?" he replied. And that answer made me feel like an idiot. We pushed the car several times, and within minutes, the wheel came free. "There," he said softly. I exhaled, relieved. "Thank you," I said. I don't know what I would have. I stopped. He was already walking away. "Hey, do you need a ride?" I shouted. He just raised his hand without turning. I watched him walking away until the dark and heavy rain swallowed him like he's never been here. The rest of the drive was silent. No voices, no sounds. Even the rain slowed, and my nerves calmed down. When I arrived at the morgue, the staff was already there, wondering what might take me so long. They unloaded the coffin, rolled it inside, and pushed toward the autopsy room. I was following them, talking about how weird the night I had. Once in the autopsy room, they unsealed the lid to transfer the body into the freezer drawer, and I looked inside and almost screamed. "That's not possible," I shouted, with a shaking, cracking voice. My stomach dropped. My heart jumped. A cold, hollow feeling spread through my body. It was him, the man from the road. Same face, same expression, same pale skin. Lying there, dead. This is the guy who helped me pull out the car," I shouted in disbelief. They looked at each other, then at me, silent, concerned. "Man, this guy is obviously and certainly dead," one of them said, looking at me suspiciously. "No, I'm positive this is the guy who—" My voice cracked. Am I losing my mind? I ran out, my chest tightened, heart pounding in my ears. My mind was trying to find a logical explanation, while I was swallowing fresh morning air, like a drowning man struggling for breath. The next day, I quit. It took me some time to clear my head, even though I never found a reasonable explanation. I still drive that road sometimes, not by choice, just circumstances. And every time it rains, every time the road disappears beneath the storm, I can't help but feel chills running through my spine as I hear in my head that voice I will never forget. Let me out.
My name is Ian. I'm 55. I've always considered myself a serious, reasonable man, not the type to jump at shadows or let my imagination get the better of me. For over 10 years I worked in security at a hospital morgue. 10 years of silence. 10 years of routine. 10 years of proving to myself that the dead are just that. Dead. Until one night proved me wrong. Before I go any further, you should know this isn't a story I enjoy telling. It's not something I can explain. And it's definitely not something I've ever forgotten. My shifts were always the same. Predictable, controlled. Every 2 hours, I'd do my rounds. I'd monitor the freezer temperatures, log any fluctuations, inspect the backup generators. Part of my job was also to manage after-hours arrivals. When medical staff brought in the deceased during the night, they'd use the back entrance. There was a button outside. When pressed, a red bulb inside my office would start flashing. Simple system, reliable. In 10 years, it had never malfunctioned. Most of the time, I'd sit in the small office near the back entrance. There was an old television mounted high in the corner, grainy picture, low volume, and a row of security monitors showing different angles of the building. As soon as I started my shift, the red light flashed. I got up and went to unlock the door. They brought someone in that night, 2 of them, first responders, rain-soaked, tired, the kind of look you get after a long shift that doesn't seem to end. Late one? I asked. One of them nodded. Found this evening. It needs to be processed in the morning. We had a small chat, nothing unusual. Just the weather, how the rain had been pouring for days without stopping, how the roads were getting worse, how nights like this always felt longer than they should. Normal conversation, comforting even. They placed the body in the drawer, slid it in with that familiar metallic sound, signed the log, wished me a good night, and left. I stood there for a moment after they were gone, listening to their footsteps fade, in the rain. Then I closed the back entrance, locked it, and gave it one last look, just out of habit. Then I went back to my duties. Some time passed. I don't know how long exactly. Time has a strange way of stretching in places like that. Then the red bulb started flashing again. I leaned back in my chair and sighed. It's getting busy tonight, I muttered to myself, pushing myself up. That alone felt off. Busy nights didn't exist in the morgue, not in such a small town like that one. I walked to the entrance, already half smiling, ready to throw out a joke. Something like, "You picked the wrong night for extra deliveries." I opened the door. No one, just rain. Heavy, endless rain, and darkness. I stepped outside. I looked left, right. Nothing. No van, no headlights, no figures moving in the distance. Just the sound of rain hitting the ground like static. I stood there longer than I should have, trying to make sense of it. Then I closed the door, slowly, locked it. I felt something didn't sit right. In 10 years, that had never happened. Not once. No false calls, no empty arrivals, at least not in my shift. Not that I'd ever heard of. As I passed the freezer room, I stopped almost instinctively. Just check, I told myself. I stepped inside. The air hit me immediately. Cold, dry, biting. The kind of cold that feels unnatural, like it doesn't belong to the world outside those walls. I glanced at the thermometer. Normal, stable, and then I noticed something. One of the drawers was open, not wide, just slightly pulled out, enough to notice. I frowned, walked closer, slowly. I looked inside. It was the body brought earlier that night, still there, exactly where it should be. I stared for a moment, longer than necessary. then reached out and pushed the drawer back in. Click. It locked into place. So, weird night, I muttered to myself. I turned and left the room, but just as I reached the office, the red light flashed again. I stopped, turned slowly. This has to be a joke, I said under my breath. I went back, opened the door. Nothing. Again, no one, no sound, except for rain. No sign that anyone had been there. Now it wasn't just strange. Something was wrong, really wrong. On my way back, I felt it. That quiet tension, the kind that builds without warning. I stepped into the freezer room again. The drawer was open, wider this time. I stared at it, a long, silent moment stretching between logic and something else. Loose rail, I whispered. Has to be. I checked it, pulled it out, pushed it back in, tested the mechanism. Everything worked perfectly smoothly, secure, no resistance. I closed it again. Click. But something in my chest didn't settle. This went on, again and again. Each time the red bulb flashed, there was no one, and each time I checked the freezer, the drawer was open, a little more, every time. At first I blamed it on anything I could. Faulty mechanism, uneven flooring, even mice, though I knew that made no sense. Still, it was easier than thinking about the alternative. Then, eventually I did something I shouldn't have. I pulled the drawer out fully, and removed the cover, just so I can see the face. It was a woman, early 30s, brunette. Her skin pale, almost wax-like under the harsh fluorescent lights. And there was a wound on her temple. Deep, dark, unmistakable. It was impossible to survive such trauma. I even checked the pulse, hoping that somehow this poor woman didn't actually die, and that somehow was pushing the door to let me know she was alive. I know how unrealistic that sounded, but I touched her aorta. Skin ice cold, no pulse, no sign of life. I stared at her for a moment, her face peaceful, eyes shut, lips relaxed, almost like she was sleeping. Then I covered her again, pushed the drawer back in. I told myself that was enough, that I didn't need to check again. But a second later, the red bulb flashed again. I didn't even react this time. I just walked, slow, heavy steps, back to the freezer room. The drawer was open. I stepped closer, slowly, carefully, and I saw her. The cover was removed, and her eyes were wide open. I froze. They hadn't been open before. I was sure of it. Her eyes were a pale blue. Too pale. Almost white. Dead white. Not focused on anything. Not on me, not on the room. Just staring into emptiness. A cold wave rushed through my body. My heart slammed against my chest. Fast, uneven. Cold sweat spread across my back. My hands started shaking. "This isn't real," I whispered. "This isn't real." She didn't move, didn't blink. She just stared with her dead eyes. I stepped back, slowly, almost like I was afraid to disturb her. My mind raced. Who do I call? What do I say? What is this? Nothing made sense. And then I realized something. Every time I left, every time I turned my back, it moved closer. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "No," I said quietly. "Not tonight." I looked around, found a metal pipe near the wall, dragged it across the floor. The sound echoed loudly in the cold room. I pushed the drawer in, hard, then wedged the pipe against it, blocking it, holding it in place. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely secure it. "There," I said under my breath. "Stay." I didn't go back to the office after that. I stayed there, sitting in the corner, watching, waiting for morning. And I swear, every now and then I heard a soft, metallic pressure, like something inside was trying to push its way out. The next day I called in sick. I don't do that. Not in 10 years, not once. I stayed home for the next 3 days. I told myself I just needed rest, that I was tired, that what I saw, what I thought I saw, was just exhaustion, stress, maybe even my mind playing tricks on me after too many quiet nights. When I finally went back to work, I was expecting something. A comment, a report, a complaint about faulty equipment. Maybe someone mentioned that a drawer had been damaged or needed repair. Something that could explain it. Something normal. But nothing. I checked the logbook, page by page. No reports, no incidents, no mention of a malfunction. No note about a body being or a drawer opening on its own. Nothing. It was as if that night never happened. But I know something for sure. Since that night, I was never the same.
My name is Brendan. I'm 32. I work security at a small local hospital, just 16 beds, never fully occupied. It's a kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where nights are usually quiet, predictable, almost boring. In 5 years of working there, I never once questioned what I saw. Nothing ever happened in that place, nothing that couldn't be explained. Until that night. The night I uncovered something the hospital had buried, silenced, tried to push into oblivion. That night, on my way to the hospital, I noticed dark, heavy clouds slowly rolling toward our town. The air felt dense, and I could feel the electric charge in the air. This is going to be a bad storm, I thought. I started my shift at 10 in the evening. On that night, there were 4 nurses on duty. When I arrived, the nurses were finishing their last rounds, checking patients, adjusting IV lines, making sure everyone was stable before the long stretch of the night began. One of the nurses, Sharon, was in the kitchen, making coffee for all of us. The oldest and most experienced, Nora, was doing paperwork at the station, and the last 2, Mary and Yvonne, were sitting in the staff room and chatting. I did my usual round, and then we all met at the station. There was quiet conversation, low voices exchanging updates, tired smiles. The occasional soft laugh meant more to stay awake than out of humor. Soon, the whole building went silent. Just the usual night in the hospital. Monitors beep steadily in the background. Small, consistent reminders that life is still being measured, second by second. The television hummed quietly in the corner, more for company than attention. The rain started. First slowly, typing gently on the window glass, it sounded almost calming. But soon, it turned into a heavy rain carried by the strong wind and was hitting the glass so hard and loud as if it wanted to break in. I was in my office, sitting on the sofa, watching TV, when suddenly, the power went off. Nothing strange, except the generator should have turned on immediately, but it hadn't. I pulled out a flashlight and headed to the station. All the nurses were already standing there with their mobiles flash on. "Brian, why is there still no electricity?" Mary asked. There was a thread of worry in her voice. "Don't worry, ladies, I'm going down to check the generator. I'm sure it's nothing. You stay here, coming back soon," I replied, trying to keep the tone like I was holding everything under control. But the truth was, I just started racing against time, because if the generator didn't start now, there would be consequences. Laboratory samples would be lost, and there were patients connected to machines that weren't meant to go silent. The generator room was in the basement, at the end of the long, cold corridor. The air was dense, stagnant, almost viscous, as if it had been sitting there for decades, undisturbed. Every breath carried the sour weight of damp concrete and creeping mold, a smell that clung to the back of my throat and refused to leave. And there would be echoes of my steps that always gave chills, and made me feel I wasn't alone. My flashlight carved a narrow, trembling path through the darkness, the beam swallowed almost instantly by the thick black around it. The walls seemed closer than I remembered, subtly pressing inward as though the space itself had tightened in my absence. I took a deep breath and stepped in. Halfway through the corridor, I heard something. Footsteps. Soft, measured, deliberate. I stopped. The sound disappeared. I started walking again, and the sound appeared immediately. "Don't let your brain do tricks on you," I whispered to myself. "It just echoes your own steps." But the longer I listened to that sound, the closer it sounded. I stopped again, and then I heard another step. Not an echo, not mine. I turned. The beam of light trembled just enough to betray me. At the far edge of its reach, I saw something. A figure, humanoid but indistinct. Its outline seemed unstable, as though it couldn't fully commit to being seen. The hospital gown hung loosely from its frame, but there was no movement, no shift in posture, no sign of life. "Hello?" I called out, giving my best to sound confident. "Hello?" the voice said back. Not my voice, I was sure of that. That voice sounded flated, hollow. A sudden, glacial current swept through me, draining warmth from my limbs. My fingers tightened reflexively around the flashlight, though I could no longer feel its weight properly. "You are not allowed to be here," I said. My voice came out a bit shaken. "You are not allowed to be here." The voice returned almost immediately. "That's it," I told myself. "This must be some bad joke." I started walking toward that figure, but instead, to be closer, I felt like the figure getting more distanced, as if the hall itself started stretching, as if space itself bent around it, maintaining distance no matter how quickly I advanced. I walked faster and faster and was getting ready to intimidate whoever that was. But then, the figure stopped, turned to the right and lifted its arm like pointing at something and, in a blink of an eye, disappeared. Just vanished. In front of my eyes. Like somehow it passed through the wall. I ran to the spot where it was standing just a sec ago. I looked around, touched the cold, wet walls. No way through. I don't even know why I thought it would be. I passed through this hall many times and never saw any side passage. "This is impossible," I said out loud. "This can't be true." A cold shiver ran across my back, not from the temperature, but from something far more primitive, something closer to instinct than thought. I turned and started walking toward the generator room, the fastest I could. I felt panic taking over, and I felt I had to move from this place fast. I heard footsteps behind me. With every step, they sounded closer and closer. My chests tightened. The heartbeat drummed in my ears. I felt like my legs were about to give up. "You're not allowed to be here," I heard whispers. I reached the door. My hands were shaking. I fumbled with the keys, metal clinking too loudly in the silence. I shoved the key into the lock, and then I felt a cold breath right on the back of my neck, and a whisper, "Help me." I didn't turn. I couldn't. I threw the door open and stumbled inside, then slammed it shut behind me. I pressed my back against it, breathing hard, listening. I heard again, voice, now soft, close. "Help me, Brandon." I stayed next to the door, pressing my body against it, catching the breath, feeling like I'm losing my mind. Somehow I felt I was safe there, in the room. Then I remembered. The generator. I pulled myself together, moved from the door, and went to the generator, but still, my eyes were at the door. I forced myself to focus. I looked at the machine. It was off. Tried to start it. Nothing. Again. Nothing. My heart pounded louder. The voice still echoing in my head. Help me. Third time. The machine roared to life. The lights flickered, then came back. Instantly. I stood there for a long moment, breathing, listening. Then, slowly, I opened the door. The hall looked normal, empty, silent, like the light waved away all heaviness that was there just minutes ago. Even the air felt cleaner. I went back upstairs, told the nurses everything, trying not to reveal how shaken I was. Asked if they had been messing with me. Sharon, Yvonne, and Mary swore they hadn't, but Nora was looking at me in visible shock. Then, she told us a story that happened years before she started working here. She actually thought it was a kind of urban legend. Every hospital has to have at least one. But now, she wasn't sure anymore. Back then, there was a young female patient. She had some kind of panic episodes that would turn into epilepsy. She spent months in this hospital. All kinds of examinations and all possible methods were applied on her, but nothing helped. She was getting worse. Then, one day she just disappeared. There was an extensive search for her outside of the hospital because no one assumed she could hide inside of the hospital. Weeks passed and the search went cold. At that time, the generator room didn't exist. But there was a storage room that was not used and had never been checked for years, just to the right in the middle of the hall. After some years, the hospital decided to modernize and renovate the building. The workers who worked at the basement were reporting strange sounds and chill feelings while in the basement and even started refusing to work there. When the new manager went down, he found the door locked and instructed to be open. Nothing could have prepared them for what they found inside. The room was suffocating, dark, airless, thick with dust that had settled undisturbed for years. And there, in the corner, was what remained of her. Not just bones, not entirely. Her body had withered into something unnatural, skin still clinging to her frame, dry and ashen, stretched thin, like parchment over brittle bone. She looked preserved. Her nails were torn, fingers still covered in dry blood in her face. Her mouth was frozen in a silent scream, lips pulled tight in agony. Her eyes still open, wide, as if the terror had never left them. Every line, every hollow contour of her expression held the same thing: fear, desperation, and the unbearable realization. No one was coming. Later, it was confirmed that this person was a missing girl. No one ever could explain how she ended up locked in that room, and since the basement wasn't used at that time, no one could ever hear her screams. The room entrance was eventually sealed with cement and the hall repainted. Then a new room, that was now the generator room, was built. Somehow that news went unnoticed in the news. Probably the new manager had good connections with the right people, and the story of the poor girl had been spread only by mouth. Eventually, people stopped believing this was even a true story, and with time, she got forgotten. Silence filled the room. My stomach tightened. I felt sick, but I didn't say anything. I never talked about that night, but sometimes When I think about that night, I feel a mix of horror and sadness.